What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulousness. Certified fantabulousness. If we want to throw a ness on top of that, he's got certified fantabulousness in him, in his DNA. The thermonuclear AF himself, co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. It is NBA playoff time as we are recording this. We have 6 of the 8 first-round series set. We are going to preview, offer our predictions on all of them. We will have the final 2 out once they are settled. The way we do this, as we've done the past couple years, because that seems to be the most digestible and that's performed the best, we're just going to go back and forth about our biggest thoughts or two on these series, and we'll just go from there, see where the conversation takes us. First and foremost, though, Mr. Hughes, how the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. Your rare, probably hasn't happened before, bumble of certified fantabulous reminded me that so my daughter is playing flag football. There's girls flag football now, and she's in a league, and she's the Huskies. Her team is the Huskies, which are purple, and her uniform hadn't come yet. And so what she does have that is very bright and eye-catchingly purple is a shirt that says certified fantabulous on it with the HardwoodKnocks drippy smiley face that she has worn in front of, I got to estimate, hundreds of people.
That's right. Indoctrinate them all.
So I just, nobody's asked what that is yet because it's just a good looking shirt. And so nobody's like, I'd like to know about that podcast because it doesn't say it's a podcast. But we are advertising. We're advertising hard. I know. Elementary school football crowd.
I still wear our sweatshirts and shirts all the time at the gym, and I think I've only been asked. I actually don't think I've been asked at all. I've told you I've been recognized from the YouTube, which is just funny because that's just nothing.
That's amazing. How does that make you feel? Does that make you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I'm definitely awkward about it. I've only ever been recognized in person for what I do. It's fewer than 5 times. I think this happened twice with YouTube. There was one time where I thought I was really cool when we probably first started out, and I was at a family function of my then girlfriend, now my wife's family, and one of her uncle's daughter's sons knew who I was and read my stuff on Bleacher Report all the time. And so I'm 23 or 24, and I thought I was so cool.
Oh yeah, you're so cool. Just if someone in the real world knows, you felt like real hot
now
shit.
I'm like, please don't anyone ever recognize me.
Usually I assume they're annoyed or disagreed or something, just all the defense mechanisms go up immediately.
No one has ever well, I guess he did, but no one's ever the 2 people that have recognized me at the gym, they didn't compliment what we had to say. There's hey, I saw you on YouTube. You have a podcast? I saw you talking about, one of them was the Knicks, and I was like, oh, they definitely didn't like what I had to say.
Yeah. Right. No, well, hey, that's good. It's good to be recognized. We're going to recognize some playoff series today, and we're also going to recognize some favorites. Okay, some favorites that are surprising favorites, just in general. I know this is a broad topic, but have you seen which teams are actually favored in some of these?
So part of my process here is I don't look at the betting odds for the playoff series because I don't want to be impacted by what those say. So okay. I still have not looked at them.
I had to file something about underdogs that could make playoff noise basically. And let's just say I was surprised at who was technically, in terms of the betting markets, considered an underdog in some of these and who was not.
Good. So you can clue us in as we go through each series.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up now just on FanDuel just so I get them all squared away. But yeah, there's a couple that are oh, that's interesting.
Well, we did have some. Well, I guess we can get to we'll do want to do news at the end of this podcast. We want to hit some news items now. What do we want to do? Let's plan this live.
I don't know. Let's do some news and then we can get to the playoffs. That's what people are here for. So we'll keep them on the hook for longer for the playoff content.
That or they've already tuned out.
Yeah. So, either way.
I think the first biggest news item is that Jontay Porter has received a lifetime ban for betting on NBA games and manipulating player props for games that he was involved in. The full scope of details is just kind of wild. It's clear that they just had him dead to rights on this. He apparently made, at least that we know of, a total profit of $21,965, I think is the exact number on 3 bet on certain. He bet on 13 NBA games, none of which he played in, through an associate. 3 of those bets were parlays that included Porter picking Toronto to lose. All 3 bets lost, though it's unclear whether the Raptors' leg succeeded or failed in those. Dan Feldman from Dunked On wrote that. The bets apparently range from $15 to $22,000, totaling 54 grand, and the total payout was like 76 grand. So he made a profit of almost 22,000, and he came out of games due to, and he gave confidential information about his health to. All it says is just someone he knew to be an NBA gambler, basically. And the thing I'll say is it takes a special kind of just this part ignorance to place an $80,000 parlay to win $1.1 million on Jontay Porter, of all players, hitting his unders. That was, of course, flagged, and the money was not paid out. The reactions to the lifetime ban have been interesting in the sense that a lot of people, and I did this on last week's podcast where I said, I wish the NBA kind of had the same definitive, like, vocal energy. It wasn't necessarily about the punishment that was coming, but Adam Silver calling it a cardinal sin. I wish he would have had that energy when we're talking about, domestic violence or racism or issues of homophobia. And I've just yet to, he went at Donald Sterling, of course, way back when. What was that, 2011 now or whatever, 2000, that was a while ago. But so I still kind of feel that way. But then I kind of saw a bunch of different comparisons being parallels to it, that Jontay shouldn't have been banned based off this. I'm just wondering what your initial thoughts are, or it's not initial because we talked about this, but now what your thoughts are that we've received the official punishment, which is Jontay Porter will not be playing in the NBA again.
Yeah, I guess my first thought is not like an original one. I think people were saying this like halfway jokingly before any of it was like confirmed. It was like the idea being that this is perfect for Adam Silver in the NBA to like use it as a message sending opportunity. Because in the grand scheme of things, Jontay Porter like may not have had an NBA career going forward at all, or at least it was going to be very fringy, just based on what he'd done to this point. And so you can make an example of this guy. You got him dead to rights, like you said. There's not really any argument to be made that like he didn't do these things, at least based on what's come out publicly. So you can just do the lifetime ban. And by the way, like if you can, I think it's almost a good thing for the league, or just the sort of the idea of like monitoring gambling so that it doesn't become a problem that affects games in a big way. Like if you could catch on this easily to Jontay Porter making like relatively small bets or relatively small Jontay Porter related bets, like I think whatever sort of catches you have in place are pretty solid. So if you're really worried about like, some all NBA player is going to take a dive in a playoff series or something, like it makes me more confident that we're not going to have that happen, because it's like the sort of law enforcement aspect of this whole thing like seems to work pretty well. If you were able to catch like small time bets on a small time player that otherwise would have been pretty easy to ignore, you would think. So that's one thing. And then just broadly, like I take your point. I agree that like it would be nice if there was sort of a feeling of like equitable is not the right word, but like if things were dealt with,
sense of obligation to say something. So I'm not even talking about the punishment, because I almost feel like it's unfair to compare the two. And as we both talked about this before we recorded, and also I would implore anyone to go back and listen to, I don't even know what episode it was, like 2 or 3 episodes ago. I thought Grant had great thoughts on why the league is reacting the way that it is. I don't look to my sports leagues or companies to be arbiters of morality. I also do think it's fair to have the conversation about holding these leagues, these entities, these people to higher standards. It's just such a complex conversation. And I think a lot of I do feel like, not that it was performative, but like there was a lot of just like self-congratulatory stuff about like, well, I didn't see this when and again, this is coming from someone who's hypocritical who said, I wish that there would just be these same definitive stances taken by the league when these issues of domestic violence or homophobia, racism, etc. And not that the league didn't, I mean, they had names, they had sayings on the back of jerseys during the pandemic. They've taken their definitive stance against it. But
that's a great like counter example. I think if you're looking for businesses in general to be like sort of the top down arbiters of morality, I'm not saying you're doing this, we're both saying like it'd be nice if, then that's the wrong way that things like that tend to happen. The way that you would get the league speaking in the same terms about other types of misconduct that like really are like there are actual like victims involved and things like that, like just really bad reprehensible behavior. Gambling's bad, it's different than the Miles Bridges situation.
It's unfair to compare the two just because when we're talking, let's just use because Miles Bridges' name keeps coming up. There's like children's livelihoods are at stake in that. Not just even talking about the victim of the domestic violence, but these things happening in front of children. So to draw parallels till, well, this guy, Jontay Porter, the
made 20 grand on a bet.
Yeah.
So the way that gets solved is if sponsors have a big enough issue with it that it costs the NBA money, or fans have a big enough issue with it, which would be really hard. But, you know, if enough people say, like, we're not supporting Team X because they have player Y, we're not supporting this league anymore. Like, it has to be bottom up rather than top down if you want, like, the league to take notice of stuff that. So that just seems to me like the way it would have to go. Whereas gambling, it's such a weird, like, I hate making the comparison because they're just like different sets of problems.
Well, it is a commentary on what we value or willing to overlook, because you kind of framed it this way, and I'm not ascribing this view to anyone. It's, is a fan more likely to tune out of the NBA because they think games are being fixed or manipulated by players, or are they more likely to tune out because Miles Bridges is on the opposing team or on their favorite team?
It's always going to be the first one. Like, just because why am I watching this if there's no actual competitive stakes that are real?
I'm not condoning that view, but that is why the league is where it's at. Like that, and that's just, and so it sucks for everyone involved. And I will say, and I do feel like this might fly under the radar a little bit, at least outside the Denver market, because the Nuggets are just humming. But like, might be time to ask some questions about these Porter kids. That's all. So just Michael Porter is that we know about the brother, and I don't want to make light of the, I don't know if it was actual manslaughter, but someone who died while he was driving under. This is not Michael Porter, it's his brother. I think it's Kobe. I can't even remember what his name was. But then Michael Porter Jr. just said a bunch of shit on podcasts that is just 5-alarm fire for me. So that might be another thing to take away from this. No natural segue to this. The Nets hired Jordi Fernandez, who's been involved in coaching searches for like a really long time now. What have you made? And this is, I want a hat tip dunked on for this, but the Sean Marks hiring his 4th definitive non-interim coach in just 8 years. Shout outs to the job security he apparently has. But what do you make of this hire? And again, it's hard to know too much about, like, we know about Jordi Fernandez's success with the Canadian team and his track record, but do you think this says anything specific about the Nets' direction, or is that still kind of shrouded in ambiguity, largely because, do you know, Grant, that they don't control their own first-round pick until 2028? That's brand new information for you, isn't it?
I had heard that. I would say it tells you is that this is a different decision than if they had hired Mike Budenholzer, for example, just to use like the complete opposite end of the coaching experience spectrum. Right. I don't know that it necessarily, I think a lot of people are saying like, oh, that means the rebuild is, they might, like the draft pick situation, I think informs me more about what their direction may or may not be than a coaching hire, just because like, you tend to think like, oh, young coach, they're going to bottom out. They're going to, really trim this down. Like, that's not really like the most sensible play, just because of the draft pick situation. So I do think if anything, it suggests to me that they're not necessarily like win now. We're going to spend, we're going to get back in the free agent market. We're going to swing, like that doesn't seem likely. Whereas like if it had been Budenholzer, I think you might have been more apt to believe that. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't tell you a ton. It's just in contrast to the hire that it could have been. It says a little bit, but the pick stuff is really more sort of indicative of what not just what they want to do, but like what they can and can't do over the next, I guess it's only 4 or 5 years.
So I'm going to throw it to you this way. Rank the likelihood that you think these 3 things will happen. So they're different levels of extremes. The Nets trade Mikal Bridges over the offseason. They trade for DeJounte Murray over the offseason. They trade for Trae Young over the offseason.
I would say oh man, I don't know how likely I think any of those are.
I guess the scale of move, if you don't want to use the players where, Mikal Bridges is a very specific thing, but it's DeJounte Murray's kind of this fringe star that wouldn't cost all of their
I feel like
pick assets. That feels like the most likely course is what I was going to.
I think that's right. And it's partly because like it's just harder to get Trae Young probably, or you have to pay more, or you whatever. I don't know what I would rank as more likely between trading for Trae Young and trading away Bridges, but the Murray one seems like the sort of the down the middle, which is like the Nets are sort of going to have to be down the middle for a while just because you can't go extreme either way.
I do think it's more likely that Mikal Bridges gets traded than they acquire like a Trae Young or maybe even a Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. Or maybe Mitchell's price tag is lower if he ends up getting moved because he only has the year left on his deal. I don't know, but it just feels like there will be desperate enough teams that might just bowl in like Brooklyn over with an offer where it's like, yeah, we're not getting any of our own picks back. It's not the Rockets necessarily, but we're just getting so much stuff for this guy who's like the 35th best player in the NBA or whatever he is.
Right.
The other quick, I didn't throw this to you, but it's like a non-minor note. We don't want to spend too much time on it. Kevin Young, the highest paid assistant, he's on the Suns. He's making, I think it was $2 million he got this year and is viewed as the offensive coordinator. He will be leaving at the end of this season to become the coach of BYU, who apparently made a very aggressive push to the way that Woj, or it was Shams that phrased it, made it seem like this was a very, Monty Williams to Detroit scenario where Kevin Young didn't necessarily want to go to the college game, but they just made the offer of so much money and control that he didn't. My initial thoughts on it are just that Frank Vogel's seat probably is a little cooler now because when you have that guy who is very well respected already in the organization, it's, if the playoffs don't go well, and he might still be on the hot seat just because they can't change very much if the postseason goes poorly. But this is almost good news for Frank Vogel's job security was my first thought when I actually saw it. Good for Kevin Young getting the bag, whatever. My first actual thought was that about Vogel.
Yeah, I just would add I want to know the terms of that offer because Kevin Young, I don't know how many assistants you'd rank ahead of him as most likely to get like the next head coaching vacancy someplace, whether that's in Phoenix or elsewhere. Like he's, Fernandez got one, but he was up there with him. And then it's Kevin Young, and I'm not even sure, like Kenny Atkinson, I guess, keeps coming up, but that's a very different type of, like he's had the job before. So yeah, I hope we do. We probably won't find out what BYU is giving him, or at least, nothing specific, but that's it. You don't see that a lot where it's like, this guy's in line. He's paid dues, is going to get this next head coaching job. And like, I don't know, I would put the over under at like 1.5 years probably, like, and that might've been conservative. And now he's just going to the college game. Doesn't happen that often.
I wanted to ask you about the Warriors, but the two other significant things, and by the time you're listening to this, since it's going up Friday, those playing games will be about to happen. Zion Williamson not playing for the Pelicans with a hamstring injury. That's a fucking bummer. He had one of the best games of his career against the Lakers. And then Jimmy Butler dealing with an MCL injury. His sounds, I mean, anything with Zion is serious, but his sounds like he'll be out for a while, so even if the Heat won. Is there just, I don't want to, again, this is like more post-mortem territory for both teams, which are coming, even if they make it out of the play-in. It feels like this has to be, and I'm going to go first on this. It has to feel like that New Orleans is just, this impacts their future way more than Jimmy Butler's injury impacts mine, because now we're at a point where we just might be in another year where we've yet to see Zion in the playoffs. We've yet to see what this group looks like in the postseason, and you officially can't play the, let's just see what happens card. We need to see what this group does together when it matters, when the stakes are higher. Because I look at this, and one of the things that springs to mind is we've had this conversation many times where it's what makes the most sense in terms of how to build out this team, and it's around point Zion. If his body, through no fault of his own at this point, because he's dropped weight, his conditioning's been fantastic, he's been playing his fucking ass off for months at this point. If his body is still just that ticking time bomb and these absences or this danger is omnipresently caked in, you can't view Zion as the lifeline of your offense, as the actual, like, this sustainable lifeline. And then you get into the conversation, well, Brandon Ingram, who got benched in that first play-in game, he can be splendid sometimes, but he's not good enough to drive your entire offense. And so as much as we want to talk about getting New Orleans more shooting, getting New Orleans more diverse options in the front court next to Zion, the conversation, if they miss the playoffs this year, or if he doesn't play in the postseason, needs to become, they need to just go out and get a floor general, because like they can't go through these stretches where they don't have their primary offensive engine or organizer. And that's, Zion is, again, he's amazing, but this stuff just keeps happening.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about it other than it's they're in the same position they've been in for a long time. And that's because you saw the same potential that we've all been seeing with Zion dominating a game. And then you saw the downside, which is just the inability to stay healthy. Um, and it's a little different this time because, like you said, he was in shape and whatever, but it's still like that frame doing that level of athletic stuff is just like, that's hard. Like he's like, I'm not a doctor, but I understand why ligaments and muscles like get like don't hold up under those kind of loads, right? So like they're in the same place they were like 3 years ago, where it's like we have this awesome guy who has this capacity to do these amazing things, but like we can't trust that he's going to be out there. So the team building is like impossible or like really, really complicated. You don't want to be in the same place in terms of the macro issues you're facing as a team like 3 years down the road. And so like I think you're probably right. They gotta look at someone who can just be less of a like a I don't know, just make the swings not so violent. Where it's like we're incredible. Well, now the guy's hurt, and our team makes no sense anymore. You know, you need like a stabilizing force.
My spiciest take that I admit I need to think more about, though, but I have thought enough about it to say this on the podcast, where we have New Orleans Pelicans fans that I think might anger. They need to be a Trae Young team if he becomes available. That's what this is tracking towards, because it's just, if you think, can you build the base of your defense if you're going to keep Herb Jones and Trey Murphy out of that, or at least have two of Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, and Herb Jones left coming out of that deal. Like you could say whatever you want about Trae Young. He's tried harder on defense. He's still bad on defense. The stuff behind the scenes, do guys want to play with him? We've seen Luka be less ball dominant, play faster this year. We've seen Trae Young be slightly less ball dominant this year. You might just need that steadying presence, because he is a better driver of offensive success than Brandon Ingram is. Like, just you mentioned the word, I think it was sustainability or steadiness. That's what he would give you. And in theory, him and Zion on offense should work just fine. It's just that he gives you that guy who, and if you want to say like, well, what about Darius Garland? He's kind of fringe for me when it comes to running the offense there, and seems less likely to shake loose, I would argue. But like, it can't be DeJounte Murray level. It's, if we're going to talk about them getting, I mean, Shamit Dua was all over this. He wanted them to go after and get Scoot. And so like, that just might be the view they need to take, not go out and trade for Scoot now. Like, the Blazers aren't going to do that anyway. But that's like, you have to me, I think, depending on how this postseason shakes out, or if he's able to come back, should they make the playoffs, that's what this has become now to me.
How do you make it's I don't know. I'm visceral reaction is like, I hate the Trae Young Zion pairing.
Why?
Because if you're saying, and I think we agree that like the way for this team to work is point Zion, and then like
so right now, yeah. I would say that if you have a duality to, like, if you have Trae Young, you can have a duality to your identity that you can't have right now because of your other primary playmaking options.
Yeah, but if like the idea on building a team is you want your best players to function well together so you can win the biggest games against the toughest opponents, like that's a different thing than what I said earlier of like someone to stabilize or give you kind of a baseline that doesn't swing so wildly with whether Zion is healthy or not. Like Trae and Zion in a playoff series, I'm just like, what's the other guy doing when he doesn't have the ball? Like now, if you get the kind of Zion we saw recently, where like he's playing incredible defense, he's rebounding better, he's doing all this other stuff, then problem solved. Like we can work with that. But if
the screen for Trae Young, that can't be a thing that happens. I'm just,
I don't know. I would be fascinated. I would be very interested if that happened, just because I would like to. I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine how.
I think, by the way, I want to make it clear, even though I disagree, I think what you're saying is very reasonable. So you would still just continue leaning in to the point Zion as your North Star.
That's the thing. I'm very uncomfortable with that. So all I'm doing is saying, Dan, that's a bad idea. I don't like it, and offering no solutions. so
that's our job in a nutshell. So with that,
you offered a solution. I don't have one. Like if it were me, I look at like, what can I get for Ingram? How can I make a consolidation trade? Because the depth of this team was its strength. Like there were all these, all this stuff about how the lineup data was the starting five got outscored, and like you throw Trey Murphy in there, and suddenly everything works great. The reserves always like preserved or built leads. Like, I don't know, some of that's noisy. I've been thinking and reading a lot about lineup data year over year, and like even a full year's worth of like a pretty good sample does not indicate what's going to happen the next year. See the Golden State Warriors 22-23 starting five versus 23-24 if you want to transition. But yeah, I don't know. It's a conundrum. Like, Zion is so good when he's right that you should build your team around him, but then he's very infrequently healthy enough to make that a sustainable strategy. So it's just like, what do you do?
Maybe I'm also just married to the Hawks, focusing on Hawks players because there are so many Hawks players I like on the Pelicans.
Sure.
Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson. I mean, I like Jalen Johnson anywhere.
Yeah.
But I doubt he would shake loose. So I just feel like if this is it for them this year, or if this is it for Zion this year, and you have to protect his long-term health. One, it sucks because it just sucks, and you could see it in his face.
He knew right away.
I felt so bad. I just felt, and I always feel bad for injuries. So I feel like, but it's just knowing what he's had to deal with, knowing how I felt so bad. And I don't say any of this to denigrate his value to the team, because he is that good to where if he was just there and you could guarantee he would be there, you're set and you flush out your team that way. I just think it's become clear. And we're at the point where I say, through no fault of his own, that can't be the way that you're building out this team anymore.
Yeah,
Primarily anyway.
Right. No, I agree. But it may just be what they have to do because the better options don't present themselves. Like, that's a possibility too. Like, what can you imagine if they run it back? Essentially, like, we go into next year and we just have how easy are your Pelicans put preseason like write-ups? It's like everything I said before, every single thing. Like, it's just all the same highs are there, all the same lows, all the same uncertainty.
Well, I don't look. Herb Jones is improving. So does he come back like kind of running these half court pick and rolls?
Sure.
And he's just your point guard now. Maybe that's the variability.
Yeah. Him and Trey Murphy. That's who we'll spend all of our preseason ink on instead of Zion.
Let's talk Warriors when we do the other two playoff series to make that segment just a little bit more podcastier. I guess, like, wow, what a banner hosting for me tonight. Let's do this. You're going to get to pick where we go every single time. Which playoff series do you want to start with? 27 minutes into the playoff.
Well, you said you're going to do news. That's all right. People are getting what was promised. It just took a half hour. Okay. I want to start in the West, and I want to make sure this is still the case, because this is one that I was a little bit surprised. Yes. Okay. We're going to go Phoenix, Minnesota. So obviously I've spoiled it, but the Suns are favored. They are the lower seed. They are the betting favorite. Does that surprise you? I guess should be the first question.
No, because I think a lot of what people in our position are going to focus on is sort of the clash of styles here, where the Suns play at most one big and four wing types, and they can get to a point where if they want to go with Thaddeus Young or Kevin Durant, and everyone's going to wonder, will they manipulate the Timberwolves' style? I'm more so coming at it from the perspective of maybe I'm getting too far into my thoughts here, but I actually think that it's the Suns who might find themselves in need of adjusting more. And I think what becomes more critical here as to why they would be favored is, one, we've kind of just seen more like point guardy things from Bradley Beal lately, in addition to what Devin Booker is doing. They've been a little bit more creative with getting Kevin Durant the ball, where it's not so vanilla all the time. The bigger thing for me is just Karl Anthony Towns. What is he going to look like? Because he did not look great. Maybe the rest before the start of it will help him. And then I don't care. Their defense is going to be fine. Minnesota's defense is terrific. Rudy Gobert is the defensive player of the year. You can play with him and Naz Reid. You can play with him and Karl Anthony Towns. They don't need to, if they want. Yes, would I have liked to have seen them been like, well, what do we look like if Kyle Anderson's at the 5? Like, yeah, or Naz Reid is the lone big more. Sure. But like, I don't think they need to adapt what they're doing defensively almost at all. And the luxury is, well, we have Jaden McDaniels, and it's you just go shut down Devin Booker. And they have decided so far, and Edwards has spent a bunch of time on Kevin Durant, but you can manipulate that if you want to make Bradley Beal more of this priority. My point is just that, what does this offense looks like? Phoenix is not this banner defensive team, but if you can't make them, Minnesota's going to be at its best. Them and Cleveland might be another example of this, just based off the personnel. When you get 2 to the ball, that's when their offense is going to be at its best. But can you make them, if Karl-Anthony Towns is not Karl-Anthony Towns, can you adequately make Phoenix pay for throwing the kitchen sink at an Anthony Edwards? And if you can't, what does that do to Anthony Edwards' decision-making? Because where he's most dangerous and he can just blast through traffic, we've seen him just kind of, I don't like phrasing it this way, but will his way to the basket or to some offense. But they're also kind of at his best where he's just getting rid of the ball quicker and making those like snap decisions on, off his live dribbles. But if he's not, I don't want to say trusting his teammates, but if his teammates aren't providing that lift of decision-making or shot making once he's getting rid of the ball, how does that then impact his thought process? And so I kind of understand. This is my very long-winded way of saying it does not surprise me Phoenix is favored, because I do think that the dynamism that Karl-Anthony Towns provides on offense for the Timberwolves unlocks so much and is so damn important that you can look at Phoenix right now because of this Karl-Anthony Towns injury, because of some of the weird stretches the Timberwolves offense has been through without him, but also with him. You can just say, wow, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal are on that team.
I think so. I was a little surprised at first, just because, and this ties into like the arguments you would make in favor of Minnesota are all like big sample regular season things: best defense in the league, higher seed, like defensive player of the year. Anthony Edwards,
Leonard Miller just on the bench, ready to come in
on the team. Looks like a play. Anthony Edwards. If Anthony Edwards was the breakout superstar of this postseason, you'd say like, yeah, okay, that checks out. Like that seems like it was trending that way. But you hit on a lot of this, and there's a couple numbers I just want to sort of put out there. Obviously, the part of the reason the Suns are favored is because they beat the Wolves all 3 times they played them, and they beat them pretty handily. It was like a 15-point per game margin. Rudy Gobert in 86 minutes across 3 games, minus 68 plus minus when Rudy Gobert is on the floor against Phoenix this year. Like that's a small sample by definition, but you're talking 3 games. And I think when you look at what Phoenix does well, and we talk about this every postseason, their best 3 scorers want to pull up and shoot mid-rangers against deep drops, and that is what the Wolves tend to do. So it's like the shots the Wolves are designed to concede are the ones Phoenix wants and the ones Phoenix is good at. You can look at all the mid-range frequency and accuracy numbers. Phoenix is elite. The Wolves allow a lot of mid-rangers because that's the math says you should against most teams. Phoenix is not most teams. So that's part of the reason that the Suns did so well during the year. And I think why they're set up to score. And then you just think of like, what if like Edwards hasn't been good against the Suns either. And that's because they love to send 2 at him and make somebody else score. And to your point, if Towns can't do that, like where's the offense come from? That's been the issue all year in Minnesota. So we're agreeing. I think, I'll just say, are we picking series? Do you want to just get to that? We're making
should probably be the wrap up if that's considered the wrap up. Is there any other question? I'm just wondering. So theoretically, and I'm not saying they should overhaul what they're doing defensively, but Minnesota does kind of have the card to play where if they need to be more aggressive at getting Phoenix off of their spots, you could play the Nickeil Alexander-Walker instead of Mike Conley card, because then all of a sudden it's Edwards and Jaden McDaniels and Naw and Rudy Gobert, and that's just so much pressure. And so if you pull that lever, you could even, if you really wanted to galaxy brain it and say, well, Naz Reid is flying around the perimeter as well, so sub him in for Karl-Anthony Towns if need be. I get what you're saying, and then the numbers can't lie on that, and so I understand why they're a tough matchup. I just feel like maybe I'm overcompensating because it feels like people aren't giving the Wolves enough credit for the different types of moves that they can make within themselves to try and counteract some of this stuff, or at least if the offense isn't humming, then okay, we're going to lean all the way into maybe we're playing even more aggressive defensively. It does get harder for them though. Like even with the bodies you have, is like if Bradley Beal is on in addition to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, then you're just kind of like your personnel is stretched wafer thin, and that does get difficult.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned the lineup tweaks that the Wolves can make, which a lot of teams can't, to throw 3 really good perimeter defenders at Phoenix's guys, and just like maybe Gobert still drops, but maybe those guys' athleticism, talking about Naw and Edwards and McDaniels, make those mid-rangers harder. I haven't looked at closely enough at the data to see how often those groups played against Phoenix during the regular season. I would hope not at all, because if they did and the numbers were still that bad, then man, it looks rough for Minnesota. But I just think I'm so hesitant still to be dismissive of like the full regular season that Minnesota had, right? Like
Right.
it was a better year. They were elite at something, which Phoenix wasn't. Like the Wolves are elite defensively. Phoenix was like okay at some stuff and pretty good at others, but there's just no, other than just like star power on offense. Like that's not like, that's, it's not a statistic. It's just, the Suns have three guys that could win you a game on their own, I guess, offensively. So I think it's a fascinating matchup. I think the stylistic differences are incredible. I think like the narratives that could come out of this series, as like annoying as they can be, are many and interesting. Like it could be another referendum on Rudy Gobert, like postseason, like non-viability. We could hear that come up again. It might actually be true this time because it sort of hasn't been before. Like just the idea of like, well, the Cat Gobert thing, it'll just dredge up the whole, we got to break this thing up. We're spending too much on two bigs. It doesn't work in the playoffs. There's all these things that could come out of this. I don't know. I think I've exhausted my, just to give you the Edwards numbers, 14.3 points on 31% shooting across his games against the Suns this year. Like not good. And a lot of that's because he's getting blitzed by a Suns defense that I think understands rightly that like, if you get it out of his hands, your odds of having a good defensive possession are pretty darn high against the Minnesota offense that just like grinds to a halt sometimes.
I was going to ask very quickly, do you think there's like everyone's focused on, okay, well, what Phoenix might force Minnesota to do or how they can exploit the way Phoenix plays? Isn't there an alternate reality where this is a overwhelming stress test for the way that Phoenix plays? Like, what if Nurkic isn't finishing around the basket and you're not doing enough to stop the Wolves off? Like, do you have to downsize even further? Are you pulling the Drew Eubanks card? Is Kevin Durant at the 5? Is it Thaddeus Young? And is it just they're so I don't want to say like tiny because Kevin Durant's pretty big, but that Minnesota style actually ends up kind of overwhelming the way that Phoenix wants to play over the course of a series.
Totally. Yeah. That's so like, I guess what I would say is I understand why Phoenix is favored. I'm not going to be comfortable. I think this is a long series. How about that? I don't think we're going to see one or the other of these teams just like solve it from game one and the other team not have like a lever to pull to extend the series to 6 or 7.
And my final question is, who winds up playing more crunch time minutes in this series, Naz Reid or Cat?
Well, Cat's going to foul out. So I guess I'll go Naz Reid.
What is your pick?
I reluctantly am going Suns in 6. You have to pick 6 because that means they're going to win the decisive game at home. If it goes to 7, obviously you take the home team there, and that'd be Minnesota. I'm just really persuaded by the regular season numbers, by the unique problems that Phoenix's offense presents the Wolves defense, and the hesitance I have in trusting Minnesota's offense. That those are kind of the 3 pillars of the thinking for me.
I'm going to go Minnesota in 7. My uncertainty with what Karl-Anthony Towns is going to look like and to what extent can we trust the Wolves offense. I honestly think that would be their undoing more so than, I don't want to take away anything from what Phoenix's offensive pinnacle can be, but I think that if this series does tilt towards Phoenix, it's going to say more about Minnesota's offense than Phoenix's offense versus their defense, if that makes any sense.
No, I think I agree with that. I think that might be the number one thing is just can the Wolves score consistently? Because they didn't all year. That just was the issue.
There were lineups that did, but yeah, I did not know the staggering numbers that you threw out for this. So don't
worry, I don't know.
I had Wolves in 7. I'm gonna stick with it because I think the Wolves are just really fucking good.
Right. Okay, let's do the other interesting West one here. This is the 4-5. This is Clippers Dallas. So just as you're time stamping here, the Clippers took 2 out of 3 here, but none of those meetings came after Christmas. Luka averaged 34 a game. Not that weird. That's what he does. Shot 32% from 3. Kyrie only played in a couple of these games, averaged 26 on really good shooting, made half his threes. Kawhi was not very good at all, actually, just under 22 a game in these series. Paul George played in 2 of them, 16 and a half points a game. And this is the Clippers winning a couple of these. So I think for me, the most interesting angle is ironically, I mean, it's Kawhi. Is Kawhi healthy? Is he not? Like, he's got this knee issue that he's not doing 5-on-5 yet. Like, if Kawhi's not there, then this is not an interesting series anymore. So let's assume he is, just for the, to make this a halfway interesting discussion. I think the Zubats angle is really interesting to me, because Dallas is going to play, I would assume, Lively or Gafford for most of the game, because they've had so much success with, dive guys that can catch lobs and can block shots and just bring athleticism. Right. You keep Zubats on the floor. He's been really good against Dallas. The Clippers were significantly better with him on than off all season long. Plus 4.7 with him, plus 1.9 without. Against Dallas, they're plus 10.5 with Zubats, minus 6 without. Small samples. Zubats seems to really matter. And I think he's key to the best version of the Clippers. And they're going to be able, I think, unless Dallas goes really small, to keep him on the floor for as long as he can play. So that is an advantage for the Clippers. We can talk about all of the other reasons why Dallas has other advantages, but that's my main thing I think I'm focused on is, like, you're not stopping Luka. If Kawhi's healthy, you're probably not stopping Kawhi. So I'm looking just more at, like, this other big piece that the Clippers have that I think will be able to have an impact in this series, where against different types of teams, maybe Zubats would not be as big of a factor.
It's interesting in the series that has Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic that the defenses feel like they're going to define it. And just because the Clippers defense has been really, really bad of late, their transition has been ass all year. They are 23rd in points allowed per possession overall since the trade deadline. While Dallas, by the way, since the trade deadline, 7th in points allowed per possession. And they're not getting, like, when you dig into the opponent's shot data, it's okay. There's some weirdness here, but it's not a huge amount of weirdness. And I think a lot of that's been, okay, you have the, not just Daniel Gafford has helped them more than I thought he was going to. PJ Washington has been doing a lot of the same stuff he was in Charlotte, but just doing it well. And like, that's a huge thing. They're like trucking opponents when PJ Washington, Luka Doncic, and Kyrie Irving are on the court. And the thing that I'm interested, this gets into the Clippers defense, is they're just going to play drop when Zubats is on the court. Is this a series then where, especially because it's just the Clippers theoretical or actual small lineups don't really intimidate me that much, where you do try it hasn't happened a ton, but Maxi Kleber and PJ Washington are our front court. And that's been, I looked this up before we started, that's been on the court for like 300 possessions without, or a little bit under, without another big, like, because they did have the PJ Washington Kleber and there's been some Lively Gafford sprinkled in there, but they're like a plus 30 points per 100 possessions when you have Kleber and Washington as basically your front court with no other big on the floor. This feels like a series where that might get super interesting, because that does then play Zubats off the court. But then it's, well, do we want to play Zubats off the court? You mentioned that he's been really good against Dallas, but like, just the idea of, if the Clippers are just going to play and drop and they just don't have the raw athleticism to navigate, I really fucking can't talk during this podcast, Grant. They just don't have that like raw explosion or athleticism, especially within some of their core lineups, to navigate screens as well. It does feel like that could eventually come back to bite them. So do you want to take them away from their core lineup? Is that a stupid question? I'm honestly asking.
Well, and just bigger picture though, too, like I would say that if you can think of another team that came on stronger down the stretch and sort of found itself than Dallas, I'd love to hear. Like, I think the Mavs, more than almost any other team, like, oh, post-trade deadline, we remade the roster. We like the look of this. We're suddenly defending. We're athletic. We're big. Like, wouldn't you be surprised? Like, I think I take your point. Like, that is something, going smaller is something you would normally consider. But for Dallas specifically, that really kind of found it. Do you go away from what worked so well, like during this late run where you looked like a legit contender? Like, that's a bold decision to go away from that. You've got to be flexible in the playoffs. Like, every option is on the table. But man, like, I would be surprised. I think you would need to see the Clippers like go way smaller and just, Gafford and Lively can't handle this, which seemed like, I don't know. Dallas would have to like lose a game in a convincing way I think before they went away from like having certainly Gafford in the first unit and then Lively after that, maybe Lively as becomes a rookie all of a sudden again. And like, we can't trust him defensively. Like he becomes the rookie he should have been all year. He
Well,
was
my
just
whole thing
better
with that
than,
is just that's where skill. I mean, injuries probably played a part in this as well, but they almost made the active decision at the trade deadline, which was we're going to get Gafford so that
right.
Derek Lively remains effective because his role is going to be scaled down.
True. Yeah. Right. No, I think, I mean, which defense? So do you think that the Mavs becoming an awesome defense is more real than the Clippers becoming a horrendous defense?
Yes. And so they just don't have.
I said, which is more real? You said yes. You have to pick
No,
one.
I think it's Dallas. His defense is more real than the
It's
Clippers
actually this
struggles are
good.
fake.
Okay.
Like Dallas's defense to me, and part of this is, and maybe I'm looking at it through the lens of this series too, but just like the Clippers in transition all year, their commitment to getting back is waxed and waned, and they just don't have, they just don't. I mentioned the athleticism explosion. They just don't have that ability to get back and make up the difference. And then it also just gets really tough. I mentioned the screen navigation. Like, okay, Kawhi can still be Kawhi, and same with PG, and Terrence Mann's okay, but he's not a great defender. And then you're going to have these, like, there's been a drop off from Russell Westbrook defensively over the past, like, whatever it's been. And then you have James Harden, who's probably going to play, I would assume, a bunch of minutes. Or so it, and then I look at Dallas, and specifically through the lens of this series, the way that Kawhi gets his points now is just like, who on this team, and even with what James Harden is doing and how reluctant it feels like he is to take like shots inside the arc, basically, they're almost set up to defend this team perfectly because you have PJ Washington, who's just super, what is the word, strong. And so it's like, if Kawhi isn't going to try and get by you, and you don't have to worry about James Harden having that kind of speed anymore, who is the player that is punishing any of their individual matchups?
Right, because you'd normally say, well, let's get Luka involved in every defensive possession we can. Let's try to wear him down. But like the Mavs have been hiding him all year. They know how to do it. And like to your point, I don't know that you have the guy that's going to like really punish Luka or Kyrie for that matter. Whereas you've got Harden on the other side, you've got Kawhi that like maybe isn't going to be in the best physical condition. Like you don't go at Kawhi, but it's like I think some of the things we'd normally worry about with Dallas's defenders, you actually can worry about like more realistically with the Clippers defenders. Do you have anything else on this one, or should we? Because it's just
how would you defend the, like, are you kind of, but like, because it's, and this what gets interesting where Dallas is, so they have Derrick Jones Jr., they have Dante Exum, and they have Tim Hardaway Jr. And that feels like if we're rounding out the fifth member of these baseline lineups, it feels like those three are going to be the top candidates. Maybe you see some Josh Green sprinkled in with Luka, Kyrie, PJ Washington, and then Big X. I'm wondering if the Clippers want to, let's say if they want to just be able to switch the Luka Doncic pick and roll, does that factor into Dallas's lineup decision making where, if they want to try and have Zubats play off of an Exum or Derrick Jones Jr., or if Tim Hardaway Jr. is being super streaky that night, that's something they could try. So I'm wondering if that influences enough. This is my other long-winded way of saying I feel very confident in the Mavs for this series, and it's very unsettling. Not that I have disrespect to Dallas, but just hearkening back to that Clippers stretch for like, what was it, like 30 games or whatever? There was like, are they the best team in the West? Is that a thing?
I mean, they were for like 30 games. That's not nothing. But yeah, I mean, and the like you mentioned it at the top, like if Kawhi Leonard is not the best player in this series, then and that's a high bar considering who is involved in this series. The Clippers, I don't think, have a realistic chance. And so if he's like not even going to be healthy at all
in the series and they have a realistic chance, but the fact that we can't necessarily guarantee that because of the knee stuff is just
right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like we've done a good job of acting like there's more to consider in this series than the one thing that really matters, which is Kawhi going to be on the floor and healthy and like look like all NBA Kawhi. That's all this is. Like we're not going to do this for every series, but because there is an injury and because it is Kawhi and because we have seen Kawhi be the best player in a series like, over and over until he gets hurt, like that's the most like that's the dispositive issue for this series, I think, or at least like no, because you know what, the Mavs could still beat the Clippers if Kawhi is like really good and healthy. Like that's on the table. But if he's not,
That's what I was going to ask you is
Clippers have no chance.
let's say Kawhi or very close to it. The Kawhi we've seen this season. How does that actually influence what becomes your biggest concern then for the Mavs in terms of influencing this series?
Yeah, well, then it just goes back to all the stuff we talked about. Oh, the lineup changes, and like how do you toggle things so you can
I look at it and it almost comes down to, it feels like James Harden or Paul George needs to figure out a way to beat the Mavericks then, because I still feel like having PJ Washington, even having Maxi Kleba, like going up against this version of even the peak version of Kawhi and the way he likes to score, it doesn't require the same type of defender to at least say, go on Kawhi. We don't actually need to send you a ton of help. And then so does that fall to, and even if they do, then it's going to fall to Paul George and James Harden anyway. And I know Harden's had some good first round series, which this is, but I don't know.
Can't trust him.
I'm just unsettled by how much my feelings have plunged on the Clippers, which makes me think that I have Dallas in 6.
So I also have Dallas in 6, but this could just be a sweep if Kawhi is not, don't you think? I mean, like, because if he's not if he doesn't play, obviously, then like, what are we even talking about? But if he is somehow limited, I mean, it's priced into the 6, I guess.
The other thing that's not being talked about enough, James Harden did not exactly close out the regular season on a banner stretch himself. So if you're getting that version of James Harden coupled with a hobbled, reduced, or no Kawhi Leonard at all, Paul George might as well. You are a New York Knick. Congratulations, Paul George.
Come on down. Yeah, no, I was interested we landed in the same place there. Should we finish out the West before we move to the East? Do you have a strong preference?
This is your show.
All right, let's do Denver Lakers. I'm not sure what all to say about this. Anyone listening to us, I'm sure, is aware that the Nuggets have won 8 straight, that Jamal Murray went bananas in the series they played against the Lakers last year. The Lakers have, here, I'll just jump right to my one thing, because I mean, we can't spend that long on the series, I don't think. We'll surprise ourselves. Gabe Vincent is insanely important to this series, because when you look at what are they going to do? What do the Lakers do with Jamal Murray? D'Angelo Russell, that's someone else we can talk about. Can't guard him. Austin Reeves can't guard him. Your Taurean Prince can't guard anybody. If anyone is going to change Jamal Murray, it's going to be Gabe Vincent from what he did last year. And I'm wildly uncomfortable saying Gabe Vincent, he's up for it. He's healthy. He's ready. I love Gabe Vincent. We talk about Gabe Vincent many times. I always say good things. I mean, he's the guy, because if he can't guard Jamal Murray, they don't have a body to do that.
Darvin Ham rejects everything you just said because the answer is Taurean Prince.
Always.
Or Cam Reddish. That's going to be, man, the Cam Reddish card is going to be played at some point, and Lakers fans are going to be probably pissed. So, yeah, this is very clearly going to be, if the Nuggets don't win this series, my first reaction would be well, who kidnapped Nikola Jokic?
Right. Yeah.
And someone asked Jontay Porter if he had money on this series and was trying to influence it. So I'm trying to look at it through what is your actual concerns for Denver in this series? And I was trying to figure out some as an exercise to go through this. I have a couple. And so are you going to get enough offensive involvement and effectiveness and even volume just from I call it the fifth member of the unit, but it's not, where it's okay if Aaron Gordon is going to play the 5 or just be on the court at all. If we know what he could do as a playmaker, but is he going to be willing to, take those drives, to take some of those threes? What about Christian Brown? We know what he could do as a cutter, but are you going to get enough shooting and activity on offense from him, and even Peyton Watson? Because those are guys that you're going to lean on. And if you don't, that does mess with some of the stuff you're doing. And then kind of the other thing is, and I'm not trying to feed into the Lakers always get the calls machine, but LeBron James's catch and shoot 3-pointers really opened up his driving game this season. The pull-up 3-pointer is not falling. So maybe the Nuggets won't care about sitting on him a little bit. But if you get into foul trouble, if Aaron Gordon or Jokic get into foul trouble because of defending or going up against contesting LeBron James or even Anthony Davis, that's just something where it's, oh, okay. What if there's a game where those two dudes are in foul trouble at the same time, and it's, oh my God, is this a Zeke Naji night? All of a sudden, is it DeAndre Jordan night? All of a sudden, that's in the grand scheme of things we're talking about. That's a game. That if that happens where both of them are in foul trouble, I can bet Nuggets Twitter will be alive with conspiracy theories.
Well, of course. No, I think that's right. Yeah, it's interesting. You have to almost look at like, you can't just think about the context of this series. Like, what are the nitpickiest problems the Nuggets have? It's like, well, I mean, they might have to play DeAndre Jordan. Like that would be bad for this series, but it's like none of it is specific to the matchup. And it's just like, it's hard. We're like, the Nuggets are going to win the series. I think they'll win it easily. I think everyone thinks that. I guess like, so of the 4 games that the Nuggets won in the playoffs last year against the Lakers, 3 of them were within 6 points, like 6-point margins. And the general tenor of most of those games were, it's pretty close. The Lakers are competing. Like they have the size, like they're one of the rare teams with the size to bother the Nuggets. And then the Nuggets would just win the games in crunch time because they'd go to the Murray Jokic 2-man game. And that would just be like, the Lakers have no answer because nobody does. And that's how the games get won. So it's like, on the one hand, you'd say, well, they held the Lakers were close. Like clutch games are subject to like the vagaries of luck. And a clutch record doesn't carry over from one year to the next. So the fact that the games were in the clutch at all means that like, yeah, they've lost 8 straight, but like they're in it. They have a shot, they have a shot for 43 minutes or whatever of the game. But then it's like, if the Nuggets just consistently flip the switch against a playoff opponent and just win games late because they can, like, that cuts the other way. So I don't know if you're looking for rays of hope, the fact that some of the games were close, like qualifies as one, but also it might just also completely like negate any chance the Lakers have. Cause when the Nuggets get serious, the game's over.
There are probably smarter basketball minds than us who can find the thinnest of functional silver linings here. One of the things I keep coming back to though, is even if certain things break right for the Lakers, I can't reconcile this idea that you just need Anthony Davis to guard Nikola Jokic and then is going to be trolled when he's not averaging 35 points a game on the offensive end. The mental and physical toll it takes to just be the primary guy on Jokic, then have to cover up or try to for all this other stuff where it's the Nuggets are like, newsflash. I bet you the Nuggets are, I don't have the data on this, but they probably rank in the top 3, if not the top 1 of both off-ball screen set and then just cuts per game. And it's just like, who on the Lakers are you? I mean, okay, LeBron sometimes, and Austin Reeves is not a terrible defender. And you mentioned Gabe Vincent. It's just like, this is, there are too many, like, it's not even buttons to push. The Nuggets are going to push all these different buttons, but it's just the talent and the balance just far exceeds what the Lakers have. And the only thing I'll be here for, like, any takes on the grand scheme of the Lakers after this, with LeBron getting older, having the player option. What I really don't want to see, unless he just gets, I mean, he's banged up now, but he's always banged up. Unless he just sucks something awful at both ends, I would like us to keep Anthony Davis's performance in perspective. And I would like us to do this with anyone who basically is tasked with defending Nikola Jokic and then needs to be the second best or third, even like the third best offensive player on his own team. But the Anthony Davis discourse about disappearing, I understand he's the superstar. You need to wear all these different hats, but just like my brain like twists into a pretzel trying to think about even 1 or 2 things Nikola Jokic could do. And then if I have the responsibility of having to cover up for all these other, like, defensive, I don't want to use the word liabilities, but just that are just, I feel like the Nuggets are going to put the Lakers half court defense into a meat grinder. And even if you think, let's just say Anthony Davis plays like the second best defensive player in the world, which he's fully capable of doing, that's going to make life really tough on Jokic. And the Nuggets are still going to win in 5 anyway. Like that's just the amount of weapons and the creativity and invention that they have on the offensive end.
Davis could get his ass kicked by Jokic up and down the court in a 4-game sweep, and we could emerge from this series still 100% convinced that Anthony Davis is the absolute best option to guard Nikola Jokic. Like, it just so happens that
it's him or Bam, right? Well,
no, I just mean like, that just speaks to there isn't anyone. Like the best option.
Rui Hachimura will unlock everything about defending Nikola Jokic.
The best option in the league, which Davis may or may not be, I think he's in the conversation, is still very likely to just get smashed. And like, that's not a knock on Davis. That is just a feather in Jokic's cap. There's no one that can defend him because if Davis can't do it, no one can. And Davis can't do it. So like, what do you want? Like, I have him in 5-2. I don't even know why I went 5. I just like
I don't
picking a
think it's
sweep
just like with
feels
D'Lo
stupid.
playing the way he is I think you get a D'Lo game. You will have a LeBron game. You will have an Anthony Davis game. And I just feel like the Lakers are better equipped to take one game from the Nuggets this year than they were last year. It's like they've
And they could have
unlocked their
left.
best lineup, like the Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, D'Lo. There's just going to be a night where I think that they have it, and maybe you get some shooting variance from Michael Porter Jr., hesitance from Aaron Gordon. If there are any Nuggets fans in the comment section, I hope they call us haters for picking the Nuggets in 5 instead of 4.
Well, we mentioned D'Lo, like, lest we forget, played off the floor in the series last year. Just couldn't stay on the floor. Signed to a contract designed to be traded. Had a really good year by his standards. Like, will it be different? Will it be any different? Because
I can't, which is why, because we're just so far afield from this playoff series, the people that think the Lakers shouldn't, if they can have the ability to get them, shouldn't be in on Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell because the way D'Angelo Russell is playing. It's dudes and dudettes. We've seen this motherfucking movie before where he's just going to make you believe and then he's going to regress back into turbulence. If you have an opportunity to get one of those guys, I don't care if the Lakers offense was, I think they were 7th in points scored per possession or whatever out of the trade deadline or all-star break.
4th after the break.
4th after the break. That's great. Your defense was ass during that time, by the way. Yeah. So and kudos to D'Lo for playing this well, and it might help him decline his player option and get paid from someone, and that someone is probably going to be the Lakers at this point. But I do think this might be a rude awakening for that type of belief in D'Angelo Russell, where it's what he could theoretically get played off the floor again in this series.
Yeah, that should be the expectation.
I honestly don't think that you can afford to do that because then your offense is just going to crater, and whereas you don't have any hope of stopping the Nuggets, I don't think you do. You do have a hope of scoring on them to where it's like you can get them uncomfortable if you get out in transition, which LeBron will still fucking freight train at almost 40 years old. That guy's incredible.
Yeah. All right.
Very little LeBron James takes here.
I don't have any more LeBron takes. All right. Let's go to the Eastern Conference. Where we have another, would you like to guess who the underdog is? This is the New York Knicks versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Your two unbelievable second seeded New York Knicks against the number 7 Philadelphia 76ers. Who's favored?
I'm just going to guess the Sixers are at this, but just the way that you framed it.
Yeah, I know. It kind of takes the drama out of it when I belabor 2 versus 7 and then ask that question.
I will say,
the Sixers are favored.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get it just because. So I have 2 main questions with this series. How do the Knicks defend Joel Embiid? And it's just, I'm assuming they're not going to leave Isaiah Hartenstein all alone, but are you playing like, is Josh Hart going after him? We've seen OG defend Embiid in the past, not as a member of the Knicks, at least extensively, I don't think. But then also the bigger thing for me is I'm assuming De'Anthony Melton won't play. And if he does, we'll probably have like a back brace on or something.
Right. Who knows what you're getting.
But like the Knicks offense is it's such, in theory, a disadvantage in the half court going up against a Joel Embiid team because he can really just erase the space in which that Jalen Brunson wants to operate. And so if you're able to throw, I mean, did you watch like Kyle Lowry's defense during that playing game against, I know it was the Heat, but just like dude's out there defending his butt off.
So, that was some Raptors Kyle Lowry all of a sudden.
I love Kyle Lowry. I know people don't like some of the the gimmicky charges he takes. I love Kyle Lowry. One of my favorite.
Love for that guy.
I would follow Kyle Lowry into hell. So, and so I'm just like, so you don't have Julius Randle. That shot creation is gone. And now I know Bojan Bogdanovic was coming on and apparently playing with this wrist injury. But like now that he had they called it like a scoping, that's just making me wild. One, we already questioned, well, how much is Tibbs actually going to play him? Right. Or is it just going to look, and it's the starting 5 is just played 47 minutes. But like I thought, I called him the X factor for the Knicks because we thought at the time Julius Randle wasn't going to be back. He's not back. And like it's not just the spacing, which by the way, the Knicks were 3rd after the trade deadline or all-star break. I keep forgetting my splits in 3-point attempt rate. That is great and speaks to the human volcano that is Dante DiVincenzo. But just like, and I know you don't want to take Josh Hart off the floor, but he was, and I love the term that you've used, like their skeleton key when looking at it, saying they need someone else who can generate their own shot from different levels. And no, he's not going to get all the way to the basket, but as like kind of a mid-range scorer who can score in different capacities, then also just stretch defenses way for thin. the wrist stuff just has me wildly uneasy now to where it's
Yeah.
okay, well, who becomes that guy aside from Jalen Brunson? And the answers are Dante DiVincenzo. And then who's I'm legitimately asking here, after DV, who is the third best option to carry that role? And I think predominantly the answer is going to be Josh Hart. I feel like it's just a case for Deuce McBride at this point. I don't want to see Alec Burks in this series. That's the cat.
No.
I don't want to see him at all.
Well, I mean, if your question is like, what do you do with Embiid if you're the Knicks? The thing I was focused on is just like, because there's a lot of variables with the Sixers, right? Like Embiid did not, I mean, put up some numbers against Miami in the playing game and ultimately was good enough. Looked heavy, looked slow, looked tired. Like that's going to be a minute before he's, all the way back, if that happens at all. So yeah, there's questions there. The one thing I just can't get over on the other side of it is like, if you make Jalen Brunson get off the ball, like this is just your point packaged another way. Like, what do the Knicks do on offense? If you get the ball out of so few teams relied on one guy to like make stuff happen on offense, like the Knicks did with Brunson. Like it's the same question. Where is it coming from? Like, how do you score if you as the Sixers can blitz Brunson, can force him into like tough shots, make him work, like just get it out of his hands? That's
like Isaiah Hartenstein handoffs is
what do we do? How are you going to score? I love the high 3-point volume. I think it favors the Knicks if you turn this into like a high variance series where you might go 11 of like 41 from 3 game, but you might go like 19 for 38 in another one and you win that game. And that's how you stay in the series. It's just, I don't know how else the Knicks can reliably score. But like it used to be, if you could count on Mitchell Robinson, maybe to get a bunch of offensive rebounds and spray out for threes, like that was such a calling card, but he's not quite the same. And I think just like by and large, you'd rather have Hartenstein on the floor for all the other stuff he does over Robinson. So that like sort of supplementary offensive generation is not there, I guess, if you're not playing Robinson that much. So yeah, I struggle to see how the Knicks score if you can make Brunson get off the ball.
I think what helps is that it will be harder, I would assume, unless you're going to put Joel Embiid in compromising positions. It will be harder to get Brunson off the ball than if DeAnthony Melton was healthy, because it's how effective can Kyle Lowry be for how many minutes per game over the course of an entire series. And then it's kind of like, all right, you have Nicholas Batum. And if, again, like I said, if Melton's not going to play, if it's just a body thing, then yeah, you have Kelly Oubre Jr. is mobile, but he's not a good defender. Tobias Harris can turn it on sometimes defensively. So so that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. And then the bigger thing for me, though, is we're talking about how do you defend Joel Embiid. I went through a roller coaster of emotions. Did you watch? I know you watched, but so it was like the second or third or maybe fifth possession of the game, Joel Embiid just attacking downhill against Miami. Yeah. It was wide open space, but just the way he got off the line, I was like, oh, coming out of a meniscus injury, only 6 games back or whatever it's been, that's pretty good. And then he just proceeds to like kind of lay an egg the rest of the half.
Right.
Joel Embiid's not Joel Embiid. And so that could help the Knicks. And so if you frame it this way, what's the better team? The Knicks with their lack of secondary offensive weaponry, let's call it, or the Sixers with a windowed down, diluted version of Joel Embiid. And I think it's the Knicks, which is why I'm going to say Knicks in 7. This feels like a very ebb and flow series where there's just going to be, everything's going to unfold in miniature, where one game may look completely different compared to the next. And there's never just these pattern or trends or something or someone necessarily that you can bank on.
Yeah. So I'm going Sixers in 6. And that's only because I guess I have more faith that Embiid might be like playing himself into shape or might look a little better than he did against Miami, which by the way, Miami played a bunch of weird zone and like just gave him a bunch of different looks that I don't know if the Knicks are going to do. So what we know is the Sixers, to your point, the Sixers without Embiid were like 11-18. And I think they're like 31-8 with him. So it's like, they're in the middle somewhere because they have Embiid, but they sort of don't really have Embiid. And I'm just skewing a little more towards like, the have him side of the spectrum than the like him being out there and being hobbled is not the same as just not being there at all. So I think they're not a 31-8 team. They're not that good. They're not the team that was like second in the East until he got hurt, but they're also not the like 7 games under 500, like no chance to do anything team. It's going to be a long series either way. I think you're totally right. Like there will be games where, oh shit, like Brunson got off the ball and
45.
Yeah, well, just like Kelly Oubre had 7 steals, or like Hartenstein had 11 assists because he kept hitting DiVincenzo on a short roll in the like all kinds of, could go all kinds of different ways.
I think so. It cuts both ways. So 2 different takes is even a like lesser version of Joel Embiid might be okay against the Knicks because I don't think that they will defend him the way the Heat did or other teams might. And they'll be if they have to if he has to turn into a jump shooter, they'll give him the space to do that. And that's like, he can do that, like kill you that way. But the other thing is for the Knicks' behalf, I do kind of feel like we're underselling how inventive is too strong of a word, but like Tibbs is not known for giving a lot of offensive runway. There's just been more creativity there when you look at the way that Donte DiVincenzo or Josh Hart or OG Anunoby can get moving off the ball, or the way that they're using Isaiah Hartenstein, where it's all right, like you're not getting a ton of elbow touches, but like we're still going to give you the ball and you can make plays happen. So I think that bodes well for either side, which is why I have it being a long series. I'm ultimately a little bit more unsettled by the idea of just Embiid not being Embiid, to where we know that the Knicks can overcome being with. Some fans might argue that they're better off without Julius Randle because of his playoff track record. And just that I don't think against a different team, if this were Cleveland, if this were Orlando, I'd just be way more concerned about how their offense is going to function should Jalen Brunson be forced to get rid of the ball, because I don't know that this Philly team without the Anthony Melton has the like primary defensive talent to do that enough.
I mean, I picked the Sixers, but like, I think at some point we need to just acknowledge like the Knicks didn't fake their way to the number 2 seed, despite all the stuff they went through and all the injuries and all the different lineup. They, traded a good chunk of the roster. That OG was there and awesome, and then out and then back. And I think they're 20-3 with Anunoby in the lineup. That
every single thing you see is like the player with the first 23 games with his team, he has the highest plus minus of whatever. So like, the thing we didn't mention though.
Right. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm belaboring my own point. I'm playing devil's advocate. My own point is it might actually be not easier, but like if Josh Hart is not really attacking downhill quick enough or getting up threes, and he's going to be the one that's in the lineup and the Sixers are just leaving him alone, then that's just going to be it doesn't have to be a good defender. You'll be able to get the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands. This series has so many just weird layers to it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, at some point, and I'm not doing this, we got to give the Knicks credit for like figuring it out over the course of the year and ending up this high. Like that should suggest that they can figure this out against a hobbled Embiid. But of course, I'm not giving them that credit. I go Sixers.
But we've differed on. Well, we were together on Lakers Nuggets, and we were together on Clippers Mavs, but we differed on 3 of the 5 series we've done. So 2 of the 4.
Yeah, no, Phoenix, Minnesota were different, although not that different because like we're both going 6 or 7. I think so the last 2 actually, I don't know I don't have a sense of where you're going with these. Let's do Bucks Pacers.
So fucked.
This one, the Bucks, as I want to double check because I think we've had. Oh my God, the Pacers are favored in this series now. It's close, -132. The Bucks are +106. I'm really surprised to see that. When I put this together, I don't know, yesterday, it was Bucks -120.
Wow.
Man, yeah, it's just Giannis.
You know what the story is? Giannis good. Giannis important.
It's a shame that so the Cat injury is not on this level because he's been back, but it's like the Kawhi injury, the Giannis injury, Embiid's health. Like, it's a bummer that we have like what's the most important thing in this series? Like, oh, well, who's going to play drop? It's like, no, is this guy going to be healthy or not? And with Giannis, it sounds like not so good, right? What did Woj say? They're preparing to be without him, at least for game 1. I don't know what the timeline is or if you've seen one, but it changes everything. And I can understand why the Pacers are favored. So should we discuss this as if Giannis is going to play, or do you have like thoughts you could give me that are not specific to whether he does or doesn't play? There's some stuff, we can talk about transition stuff. I don't know.
I'm just so let's look at it. I don't actually know how to cover this one without knowing whether Giannis is going to play. I do think so. I was listening to Samson. I feel like Caitlin Cooper of Basketball She Wrote and Samson Folk have been collaborating together for the series, which, by the way, I listened to it was an hour plus preview of this series. And I want to make it clear that this is a compliment. Listening to, and taking in everything they say makes me never want to invite them on the show again, because I'm just so far, like, I can't do what they're doing justice. And I feel like they're just talking to a wall or basic a-hole, blog boy a-hole at that point. So good. I'd recommend, if anyone hasn't checked it out, go check it out right now. It's on YouTube, or go subscribe to the Basketball She Wrote Patreon. They covered it as Giannis will play at some point. And I think that's the way to look at this series, is whether we think, okay, will Giannis be this or that? Maybe if he's slated to miss the first 2 games, then all of a sudden, oh, hey, Indiana's up 2-0. That's when you make the call. But there's just too much at stake here. And he's not the type of player. I'm not saying he should play through and risk further injury, but I would expect him to play at some point this series. I don't know where you're at with that.
I just have no idea. It's the type of thing where I got to believe it's going to be almost impossible to, like, if you put it up to him, he would probably play game 1, or, like that kind of thing. But like, this is also the type of thing where if it were in the regular season, don't you think this would be like 3 weeks, no problem? Like, he just wouldn't even be close. So we're again going to deal with like a hobbled version of him.
And so the Bucks become easier to defend either way in theory, right? It's either you have a half hobbled version of Giannis or no Giannis at all. And the point that they made, and I was very curious to see how they had thought on this, or at least Caitlin had made, that they were going to see a lot of Aaron Nesmith on Giannis to begin with, and not leave that to, like, maybe Siakam coming in as the help. And so the fact that now, if you don't, now all of a sudden we're just looking at this and it's Bobby Portis on the court instead of Giannis, or it's Jay Crowder on the court instead of Giannis. And by the way, Indy quietly, not quietly, I'm sure in the Indiana market, just ticking up defensively with Pascal Siakam. And when you look at just the data of having Hallie, Nesmith, Siakam, and Turner on the court together, those 4 guys, a plus 9.8 net rating, defensive rating in the 92nd percentile, offensive rating in the 79th percentile. And just that gets, whether it's Andrew Nembhard that's going to be there, they have a lot of different defensive options at their disposal, especially if Giannis isn't playing, because you look at that, and between Nembhard just being able to guard, I'm just going to say all 80 positions in existence, but Aaron Nesmith being able to guard up and handling that physicality, Siakam's ability to, like, he's not quite a wing, but he's sized like a wing. He can defend some wings, but he can defend some bigs, and he could really disrupt if he's, playing away from the ball. And then just Miles Turner still being mostly Miles Turner. That's just 4 ridiculously good defensive players. And we haven't gotten TJ McConnell will give you ball pressure and is, as we've said, the best isolation scorer in the history of basketball now. And then just even Jarris Walker, I don't know what type of role he plays in this series, but he's shown the ability to really move around positionally and have like this disruptive, and even I would say even keeled defensive performance. I'm going to throw this to you. Giannis will play game 2 and beyond. I still have a feeling that it's just Pacers in 5. I'm looking at this team, and there's been moments when they played without Giannis where Dame looks like Dame, and the fact that I think the most off thing about Damian Lillard's game this year has been his jumper and his high quality looks. And you would expect that to normalize at some point, right? And so that's almost a good sign. And we've seen some good moments from Bobby Porter stepping up, and then certain, again, lineups without Giannis in them. But just Chris Middleton on defense this year, their defensive options in general, Patrick Beverley doesn't move me. I think Malik Beasley's played better on that end of the floor. Their transition defense is better under Doc. Are they going to be ready for this version of the Pacers where even when they've slowed things down with Pascal Siakam, they're still a fucking blur? That's extreme. If Giannis is playing game 2 and beyond, I don't know if I'm going Pacers in 5. My pick is Pacers in 5. This just feels like a things fall apart moment for Milwaukee.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to change my pick now. I want to talk out a couple more.
Did I intimidate? Did you have Bucks in 7 or something? Did Dan just predict a gentleman's sweep?
No, so I don't want to tell you what I had. I'll tell you eventually. A couple things. If you're looking for, I'll give you rays of hope for each side. So like if Giannis doesn't play, obviously that's fatal. The Bucks will not win the series. But you would say like, well, the Dame Giannis chemistry or lack of it and just the two-man stuff that never materialized, that was a real storyline all year. Maybe that was never going to work. You know what we know has worked pretty well is Dame running, spamming high pick and pop or pick and roll with shooters around the floor, just being like the guy, like with limited co-stars that just catch and shoot or catch and drive or whatever. And just like, he's the driver of everything. That's his whole career. That's what Portland did with him and Nurkic and like limited guys around him other than McCollum. That's a little different. Maybe Middleton is your McCollum in this scenario. So like, it's not a totally uncomfortable way for Dame to play and for the Bucks to look, this is a disaster scenario if Giannis isn't out there, but it's like a way for them to say like, we got a shot doing this because we have a guy in Dame who has made a career, a Hall of Fame career out of playing the way we're going to have to play now. So like, that's semi-hopeful. For the Pacers though, like even Pacers have just been better, like since the All-Star break, and with this revamped team, they're plus 6.3. Forget the lineup specific stuff. Their net is plus 6.3 since the break. The Bucks are like plus 2.5.
That's with Hallie not being Hallie. And part of that, I know people have ascribed it to injuries, but we've mentioned this on this podcast. I think someone mentioned it to me, like we haven't mentioned on this podcast. Remember who it was? No, it's also because they've had to move him off the ball a lot more, which is probably beneficial in the long run. But that type of mid-season adjustment exploration is going to come with a learning curve. So I didn't know their net rating was that high post All-Star break. My God.
And the defense hasn't been that good, but I think the data you put out, which is more lineup specific, matters more because they're just going to play their better defensive lineups. So they're 23rd, I think, doesn't matter. So while you're like getting hopeful about, oh, Dame could do this, like so the Pacers are one of the worst teams at giving up points in the paint in the league. And it's like, oh, this was even talked about during the play-in tournament or the in-season tournaments. Like Giannis is the best paint scorer on planet Earth and the Pacers can't defend the paint. Therefore, the Bucks are just going to destroy them because Giannis will have 25 dunks and they can't do anything about it. No one on the Bucks besides Giannis scores in the paint like ever. So if you remove him, the Pacers' biggest defensive weakness is just like, it doesn't matter anymore because the Bucks just will not score at the basket. They just don't have someone else that does that besides Giannis. So like, yeah, it'll be great if Dame is playing pick and pop over and over with Brook Lopez. Like, it just won't matter because they'll never make layups or dunks. So like,
I would wonder if that provides a stress test in the sense of, well, then Damian Lillard, who already probably like the lane will be open, and we've seen him get into the paint during those moments without Giannis. But even coming back to some of what would be their best non-Giannis unit in this lineup. And before you even answer, I'm going to say that you probably have Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez in it. And I don't know what that does to your transition defense in that scenario. And so if you're going to pull one of them, it's like, what kind of happens there? Now you're going up against this front line of Siakam and Turner, which can play really fast, but you've now given up. I mean, are you turning to Danilo Gallinari in this series? That's certainly not going to happen. So the Giannis factor looms, but I think that the Pacers are going to win this, even if he plays, in large part because I really do think the Bucks, they've improved at points, but like they've just never fully coalesced. And whether that's because of injuries or if the roster's just, it's not as fitting as it seems. I mean, like I was off on them. Once we get to the thing that we got wrong about every team, I predicted they were going to have a top 5 offense and defense. Boy, was I, they had neither, by the way, for those keeping score at home. So I'm just struggling to, if Giannis plays and is Giannis, there's definitely, how do you defend him? You mentioned their weaknesses in the paint, and it's okay. You have Nesmith or let's say Siakam on him, and you're going to throw other people at him. But I don't know, this Bucks defense, even though it's improved under Doc Rivers, I don't think it has enough to slow down this Pacers offense and the variable ways that they can now play with Pascal Siakam, because they have all these different gears where it's from warp speed to like, if you need to slow it down in the half court, even without Buddy Hield, now like you just have a ton of options.
Do you want to guess? Maybe you know this. It's one of those stats that keeps coming up. What the Bucks record was when they fired Adrian Griffin?
30-11.
Yeah, 30-13.
And then they were 500 under Doc, right? Like 17-18 or something like that.
Yep. And just
to his credit, he has cleaned up a lot of the transition stuff, but it's just they don't
Sure.
have the personnel, especially without Giannis, I would argue, to be an elite defensive team.
So I'm gonna go again. Caveat, kind of like you gave. If Giannis plays game 1 and he's like anything close to Giannis, I think the Bucks win this. I'll just go Bucks in 7, but I'm gonna go Pacers in 6 because it just seems like Giannis is not gonna play at least for a game or 2, and then we'll be limited.
I'm going Pacers in 5. It just feels like disasters even ready, and even just I'm just like kind of thinking like, what is happening to Brook Lopez in the lineups where like Bobby Portis? Like, where are you hiding Brook Lopez? To like, or not hiding because Brook Lopez, but like, what are you doing to keep Brook Lopez in his sweet spot on the sweet spots on the defensive end here? Like Siakam and Turner are just like that's more of one of the nightmarish front courts for him to go after, right? Because Miles Turner can stretch the floor. Pascal Siakam can stretch the floor himself, but just has this on-ball dynamic to where it's just he can score at every level now. Like just has all these different counters. And so I can't come up. And that's just wild. I picked the Bucks to come out of the East this year. So
they just weren't what we thought they were going to be. That's all it is. All right, let's go to
our. It's going to look hyper foolish at the end of this, but we'll see.
It's always a possibility. Cavs Magic, the 4-5 in the East. Cavs are relatively heavy favorites here, minus 205. So just a couple preamble things here. Split the season series 2-2. They haven't played since February 22nd. This, I guess, feels like a pretty defensive oriented series, but that also might just be because Orlando kind of only has one dimension, and that's defense. But certainly the Cavs have been defined by their defense over these last couple of years. Do you have anything that's like, I have one thing I think, and it's fairly basic that like just stands out to me, but what's your question or what's going to swing this for you?
That's interesting. Like in terms of,
I can give you mine if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just how does Orlando score? I mean, it's just that's it. Like that's been the question all year. And I don't know if you can win a playoff series just with awesome defense, which the Magic have.
So here's what's interesting is that my question is almost counter is Cleveland more vulnerable defensively than we think? Just because
that's the same question, kind of.
So because it's like, are they conducive to maybe letting Orlando score? Just Jared Allen hasn't necessarily looked right. And then the other big thing here, and I don't think people understand how important Dean Wade has been to the Cavs, looking at the level of assignments that he guards, dealing with his knee injury. I guess I report that he's not expected to play in game 1. And then you do have Isaac Okoro still, but he's someone who is just like, you want him to defend the guards, not necessarily need to scale up. And then it's okay. Evan Mobley is Evan Mobley. We know that, but look at the bodies. Like just the like even Franz Wagner super strong, like Paolo Banchero against Evan Mobley's frame. That's not, I'm not going to say it's a caps lock mismatch for Paolo Banchero, but he could move Evan Mobley around.
I have some numbers for you before you go any farther on the Banchero.
Oh no, am I eating my about to eat some crow?
No, I think you're generally right. However, Mobley guarded Banchero. They only met in 2 of the 4 meetings because Mobley was hurt so much, which in those meetings they're split 1-1. With Banchero being guarded by Mobley, this is like just under 41 possessions by how NBA.com records it. 7 points on 3 of 13 shooting with no free throw attempts. So like that's noisy and it's a small sample, but Mobley guarded Banchero really, really well. And that more than any other stat to me was just like, I was confirmation bias because I came into it like, I think if it comes down to it, Cleveland has a better chance of scoring against a good defense than the Magic do. And if Banchero is not going to be able to score, look, 13 shots, that's nothing. He's going to take 100 in this series. But it's just like, that just confirmed my overarching idea of like, I don't really love either of these teams offensively, but I think like Mobley and Garland both had decent success offensively against, we think Jalen Suggs is the best defensive guard in the league. And then Mobley did pretty well on Banchero. So I'm just like, then where are is Franz Wagner going to remember how to hit threes? Like maybe that's what it comes down to.
So let's say Mobley does make life difficult on Banchero. It's if you don't have a Dean Wade, what is your best option to throw at Franz Wagner defensively? You can still look, the shooting's been all over the place, but like when he gets moving, like that's still like a bigger, stronger body.
Yeah. I think I think the same issue with it's like, I guess it's Okoro. I guess it's, you try Strus. Like, it's whoever's on Wagner is going to like be on their heels the whole game. I think that's a definite.
I do. And so I'm not trying to minimize Cleveland's like defensive ceiling in this. I ultimately wonder, is Orlando going to have to change the like the rate at which it plays on offense? Because I do think Dean Wade or no Dean Wade, if you just let Cleveland's defense get set, you're making things so easier on them. And so what are you going to be able to do off these live ball rebounds or turnovers? We do, like, Orlando does run after they're going to force, turnovers specifically, but like, it's not with the frequency that you think it would. No, and they're a team, like, you look at, they were during the regular season, they were 25th in transition frequency and 28th in transition frequency off of live rebounds. Do you have the gear to play faster than that to ensure that Cleveland's defense isn't getting set? Because that feels like your most effective way to score here. I mean, I guess just between Caro and Franz Wagner, you could try and force some switches and like punish mismatches against the smaller guards or wings, but like, you're still going to have Evan Mobley and or Jarrett Allen on the lower levels at that point. Conversely, though, just the struggles that Darius Garland has gone through, and close the season on a higher note. And Donovan Mitchell has rest now, played a little better to close, even though it's just a really rough end of the stretch for him.
Yeah.
We're not doing X Factors. We already did X Factors for every team on that one podcast, but JB Bickerstaff feels like one of the bigger coaching X Factors of the postseason, because I've given him more leeway than Cavs fans, but he's felt at his best when they're shorthanded this season, because it forced him to play this team, especially in higher leverage moments, a very specific way. And now that they're full strength, we have seen him pick and choose between which bigs are on the court, whether it's Mobley or Allen. Is that something, I guess, politically, that you're still able to do in the playoffs when the game is on the line and it's, well, Evan Mobley's on the bench or Jarrett Allen's on, like, can you, does he have it's not even just the clout. I'm sure he has the organizational clout to do, but like, do you just have the gall, the guts to do it? And so that's kind of a wild card here. I ultimately and I spoil my pick, like, Cleveland has the higher offensive ceiling by a light year, even if, and I've said this so many times, if you watch Orlando, like, there's Jamal Mosley's done a good job of generating spacing for this team. Defenses just don't fucking care. And the Cavs aren't going to be any different.
Yeah.
And I don't know who makes them pay. Like, I trust Jalen Suggs' shooting and on-ball decision-making now, but just, like, you're going to need, I guess, a lot of Cole Anthony and like a lot of Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner to obviously progress to a higher mean on the, on his outside clip. I think Orlando's a really good team in their defense. This is definitely the candidate for the ugliest series, right? Like, kind of what the Knicks and Cavs were last year during the second round.
I was going to say, like, the way Orlando wins this is it just, they pull the Cavs down to their level. And like, I mean that as a compliment, is they just make it a total rock fight, are just unbelievable, like even better than they were during the year on defense. And Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell, like 19.5 points. You mentioned it, like the rest will help him, but like, he's not been good since the All-Star break. And it's just the knee, the nose.
Darius
like,
Garland's going to get hit in the face at least twice.
For sure. It's guaranteed. If he does, like, at some point in this, by the second quarter, he will have gotten hit in the face. It's a given. So like, I just, there's definitely like, I'm picking Cavs in 7. So obviously the Magic have a great chance in this series because it's going to go the duration, but the Magic just don't generate enough points from 3. That's going to allow, they're dead last in the league in percentage of points scored on 3s. So like,
and you're not making that up with the foul line.
If you have a glaring thing like that, the Cavs can just pack it in and say, have at it. And the Magic, I don't think the Magic would be lucky, just to be totally straightforward about it, to make enough 3s to score enough to win the series. Not impossible, obviously, but it's just the Cavs have more options to score enough to win. And the Magic just, like, it's hard to find ways they're going to be able to do that.
Donovan Mitchell's just a playoff killer. And I think even if they don't want to get away from their core 4, Evan Mobley has taken more 3s now. And so that's something to kind of just hang your hat on. And I ultimately think that the Cavs offense doesn't need to be at its peak to beat this Magic team. So I have Cavs in 6, actually. I don't know if I'm catering to the too much inexperience, but you just look at, I really feel like the only way for the Magic to outgame the Cavaliers offensively is just Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell both have off series, because if even one of those dudes is just himself or what we know them to be, that to me gives Cleveland a decided leg up.
Yeah, it's enough. And that's, again, we're assuming the Cavs are going to play really good defense, but it's not that hard to play really good defense against a bad offense. Like that's part of it too.
We are on to stat padding. There will be guess a player, but first, Grant, I have some playoff themed quizzes, questions, what have you. There, are you ready? Are you in frame? Are you buckled up?
I've never sat straighter.
All right, I've got a bunch here for you. Okay. So here we go. Grant, which NBA player has more NBA playoff games with at least 40 points? LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan.
Correct, 38-29. Kobe Bryant or Kevin Durant?
Kobe.
Incorrect. Durant has him beat 14-13.
Okay.
Shaquille O'Neal or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
40-point playoff games. I'll say Shaq.
That is correct, 12-9. Luka Doncic or James Harden?
Luka.
That is incorrect. Should have went with longevity. Harden, 11-8.
Oh.
Steph Curry or Dwayne Wade?
Curry.
Correct, 8-7. Giannis Antetokounmpo or Hakeem Olajuwon?
Giannis.
Incorrect. Hakeem Olajuwon had 11 to Giannis's 8.
Wow.
Kawhi Leonard or Russell Westbrook?
I'll say Russ.
That is correct, 7-5. Jimmy Butler or Dirk Nowitzki?
Let's go Jimmy.
That is correct, 8-7. Larry Bird or Magic Johnson?
Bird.
Correct, 5-4. Devin Booker or Jamal Murray?
Oh, Murray.
Incorrect. Devin Booker, 7-5.
I was so confident.
Kyrie Irving or Donovan Mitchell?
Mitchell.
Correct, 4-3. Anthony Davis or Nikola Jokic?
Davis.
Incorrect. Jokic, 4-3. Paul Pierce or Jason Tatum?
Tatum.
That is correct. 4-3. Jalen Brunson or Timmy Duncan?
What a combo. I feel obligated to say Tim Duncan.
That is correct. 4-2. Charles Barkley or Damian Lillard?
Barkley.
Correct. 5-4. That was that block. I have a couple more here for you, shorter blocks though.
Yeah, I think I hit like 60% there. I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I thought you were going to be on a roll at one point, but then you botched the Devin Booker Jamal Murray one.
I thought for sure. All I think about is 50 spots from Jamal Murray. Him and Mitchell. I'll never forget that Utah-Denver series.
Well, speaking of 50 spots, Grant, which NBA player has not had a 50-point game in the playoffs? Kevin Durant, James Harden, Jason Tatum, or Russell Westbrook?
I'm going to go Russell Westbrook.
That is incorrect. The answer is James Harden.
Never had 50. Okay.
Which NBA player has not had a 50-point game in the NBA playoffs? Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, or Nikola Jokic?
Man, I want to say like all of them. I'll say Jokic.
That is incorrect. The answer is Luka Doncic.
Never had 50. I'm going to go over on this one. I can feel it.
Well, this is the last one. So,
okay.
Which NBA player has not had a 50-point game in the NBA playoffs? Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, or Damian Lillard?
I will say Kyrie Irving.
That is correct.
Yes.
You did not get swept. Nice job by you. Staving off disaster.
Came through.
Here's an interesting one, though. 4 active NBA players have multiple 50-point games in the NBA playoffs. Who are they? I will give you 3 guesses, 3 strikes. Let me rephrase that. 4 active players have scored 50 points in an NBA playoff game at least twice. Who are they? I will give you 3 strikes.
All right. I'm going to say Steph has done it.
Incorrect. Strike 1.
That's not a good start, Dan. That's the worst way you can start, is with a strike. Does Donovan Mitchell have 2?
That Donovan Mitchell is 1.
Okay. Does he have more than 2, or you don't have the numbers there?
Also, spoiler, all of these players have 2.
Okay. I think Jamal Murray has 2.
Correct. 2 of 4 so far.
So I got 2 more active players. Tatum. Does Tatum have more than one?
Ooh, you're on a roll. That's 3.
Oh, man. We've established that Harden never had one. God damn, who else has gotten multiple 50s that's still active? I'll say LeBron.
That is incorrect. Strike 2.
Oh, I thought I was done there. So I'm really spinning now. Who else has had 50 more than once? I'm not going to ask you for a hint, but I feel like I'm missing somebody really obvious. I'll say Jokic.
That is incorrect. It is Damian Lillard.
Oh, I wasn't going to get there.
Really? I thought he would. I'm not saying that you should have gotten it. That was a tough one, I thought. But kudos to you for not guessing Kevin Durant. I thought that might have been one you just gravitated towards. You didn't guess Luka, but you also knew from the previous questions that he didn't have multiple 50-point games.
Mitchell, I was sure. I don't know why I said did Steph first. Maybe because I knew he had one last year, and I just thought he must.
Because you constantly disrespect Steph in these exercises by picking against him.
Right. I had to throw him out there first as just a show of good faith.
Okay, so one more block here. Which NBA player has more triple doubles in the NBA playoffs only? LeBron James or Magic Johnson?
I'll say, short playoffs. I'll say LeBron.
That is incorrect. 30-28 for Magic.
Damn it.
Nikola Jokic or Russell Westbrook?
Jokic.
Correct. 16-12. The gap there was bigger than I expected, to be honest. Tim Duncan or Kevin Garnett?
That's a weird one. I'll say Duncan. Just more playoff games.
Correct. He had 4 triple doubles to Garnett's 3. I didn't think these dudes had that many triple doubles in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie. Steph Curry or Kevin Durant?
I'll take Steph. I can't disrespect him anymore.
Good thing, too. That is correct. 3-2. Charles Barkley or Chris Paul?
Ooh. I'll go Barkley.
Correct. 4-3. Luka Doncic or James Harden?
Luka.
That is incorrect. James Harden, 4-3. Draymond Green or Oscar Robertson?
I'll say Draymond just because he's got to have played way more playoff games.
10-8 in favor of Draymond. You are correct. And I have to note, we've gotten a lot of comments that I keep saying Oscar Robinson. I'm sure I've made that mistake at some point. I think it's just my nasally voice.
We all got verbal tics. We all got.
Like, I know it's Oscar Robertson. Thank you. And that might even sound like Robinson just there. Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen?
Ooh. Playoff triple doubles. I mean, it still has to be Jordan, right?
No, Scottie Pippen, 4-2.
Good for him. Only 2.
Larry Bird or Fat Lever?
Yes, he's back. Oh, I will say Larry Bird. Sorry, Fat.
Yeah, 10-3. Just had to throw Fat Lever in
I
there.
really wish it had been Fat Lever.
Rajon Rondo or John Stockton?
Ooh. I'll say Rondo.
Correct. It's not even close. 10-1.
Very sneaky by you.
You have some guess players for me, no? Those were some pretty good ones, I thought.
Those are good. God, listen.
People will complain that they're too close, the answers, but we're dealing with a playoff sample size. It's like we're just winnowing it down the number of games so much that the gaps are, Rondo versus Stockton, I thought you were going to get right away. So I'm surprised that you thought about it because the 10-1 was just funny. And I can't stand John Stockton as a human being, but
right. No, I just, I think once I was going to default to the more modern player anyway. I don't know why, just generally, but yeah, I believe Stockton. Would you say Jordan only had 2 playoff triple doubles because Pippen had? That's crazy. I can't believe that.
All right, MJ.
Also, yeah, get it together. Also, like, they're more fun if they're really close because it makes it kind of into basically like when I'm wrong on a really close one, I don't feel as bad. So I appreciate.
If you would have picked Stockton, you would have felt like ass on that.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's ridiculous. A 10-1 margin. Forget it.
You've also tried to convince me that the margins are smaller than they are sometimes. One of the last ones we did way back when, and I finished cutting up the 25-10. thing, there was like a gap of 35 games. You're like, well, that's like fairly close for their career.
Close.
It's like,
It's
is
in the
it?
neighborhood. It's like a half season's worth of games. Like it's fine. All right. I have a couple guess of players from Austin here. I'm not sure if I have some from some other people. I have to check. All right. Clue number 1, Dan. I am a 2-time block champion and racked up a career total of 1,759 blocks, which is currently in the top 30 all time.
Top 30 of all time.
2-time block champion helps more. I don't know. Like,
I'm a 2-time block champion. I feel like I should just name someone who I know is a block champion. What is it? I'm what all time in blocks?
currently top 30.
And this is total blocks or is it per game?
Well, the way the question is phrased, which gives his career total of 1,759, it's however.
I'm just trying to buy time.
I'd say it's however you would say, like, oh, he was the scoring champ or the block champ. So I assume it means the average, but I bet that's not clear. Like led the league in blocks or, whatever. Led the league in scoring. You wouldn't say the guy that had the most total points, I don't think.
Manute Bol?
No. Good guess, though. You have to try the guess on the first one, just on the off chance you get it. All right, clue number 2. Despite my 2-time league leading block seasons, my career also included 9 seasons of averaging less than 1.5 blocks per game.
Wow. So, like someone playing in a...
I mean, less than 1.5. 1.5, like if it's 1.4, that's still a shit ton of blocks.
Also fair. Sean Bradley?
Nope. Let's see. All right. You ready for the next clue?
Yeah.
You want to throw some more names? Clue 3. I was also a 3-time all-defensive team member and an NBA champion.
Ooh. 3-time all-defense, NBA champion. So it's not Ben Wallace, because wasn't he like a 90-time all-defensive player?
4 for Ben Wallace.
Oh, that's a little bit fewer than 90. The championship thing is throwing me off now because I'm trying to think of like title winning bigs.
I know.
2-time block champion.
Well, I was going to give you I was going to give you a subtle clue, but I'm going to refrain.
David Robinson?
Nope. You want the next one? You might get it on this next clue. I participated in the 2012 Olympics and won a silver medal.
Was Anthony Davis on that team?
It is. I don't know, and it is not Anthony Davis. Won a silver medal in 2012.
Oh, that's going to make this infinitely harder for me. So I won't guess Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan. Who in 2012? That was a minute ago. Yeah, I guess give me the next clue.
All right. Clue 5. I was drafted in 2009 along with 7 players who made an all-star team from that class, 1 being my teammate. Unfortunately, I was never able to do so myself, make an all-star team, despite my defensive dominance. That's okay, though. I still managed to rake in over $140 million in career earnings.
I'm going to fucking kick myself when I can't get this.
There's no chance you don't get this in the next 2 clues. Or maybe 3. You got 3 more.
2009, Andrew Bogut?
No. Good guess, though.
2009. Won a silver medal. Never made an all-star team. Was on a team with someone from the 2009 draft class that made an all-star team?
Yes. I don't know who that is, though. I'm trying to think who that is. Oh, well. I'm not sure I know who that is.
Yeah, keep going. Holy shit.
All right. Clue 6. I have built up a pretty solid second career in the entertainment industry with a whopping 500K plus subscribers to my YouTube channel as a chef.
Serge Ibaka?
Serge Ibaka.
Holy
you got it.
Crap. I didn't know he won a silver medal.
I think he was on Spain or something. Like,
do you remember when he was considered the unicorn because he could hit set threes and block shots rather than,
and he could shoot he shot like 1.6 per game, and it was like, this guy, he's the next.
God.
But he was also playing power forward. Like they just didn't use him at center. We weren't quite there yet with like had Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka was like 7 years too early. If you got Serge Ibaka as a rookie, like now, like he would be the New Orleans Pelicans ideal center. Like we would stop talking about Miles Turner forever. It would just be
probably like
Serge.
dribbling and stuff more too. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, you'd have way more diverse skill sets. Do you have one for me, or should I give you this one that I think I know the answer to?
Why don't I give? Oh, is that one from Austin?
Yeah, I'm going to look it up real quick. I'm like 99% sure. Austin, give us the players when you give us the guess of players.
I mean, I know mine from Austin, but I'm wondering if I should go find one from Mike now so we don't like yeah, let me bring up Mike's document here. I actually do not as of right now. I'm going to double check actually. I don't know if you're going to have to get into a mind of a psychopath this week.
Well, that's a shame.
Let me just yeah, wow. Be Rich does not like you anymore. I don't blame him, to be honest. Okay. Ready? From Mike.
I'm ready.
Who won? I was selected outside the lottery by the Bucks in 1995 out of the University of Ohio, and then was traded on draft day to Portland.
Bucks to Portland, 95. I could not name a single player from the University of Ohio. Bucks to Portland.
You are not going to get this one.
No, not at all.
I never would have gotten this one. Maybe you might. You're better with history than I am, so maybe I don't mean to.
No. I like it. I like being set up this way. If I fail, it's no one's disappointed. Bucks to Portland, 95. I'm just gonna say, oh, that's way too late for him.
If you one shot kill this,
I know I have to give a name, just because it would be so awesome. Bucks to Portland, 95. Who the fuck even is on Portland in the mid 90s? All the guys I can think of are like way too old. They were there in the 80s that were still good in the 90s. I have no idea. This guy didn't play for them until later in his career. I'll just say Detlef Schrempf.
No.
Okay.
Clue 2. I was an anomaly at the time in that I was an undersized power forward at 6'6" and 250 pounds.
Bucks to Portland, small power forward. This isn't who it is, but Clarence Weatherspoon.
No. Good guess, though. I like that. Clue 3. I played in Portland until 1998 when the team's absurd collection of traditional bigs left me out of the rotation. I was traded with Alvin Williams for Damon Stoudemire and Walt Williams.
So goes Portland to Toronto. Who's like a little stocky power forward? Like, do you just not know this guy's name? Is it that obscure? Well, I'm sorry.
No. I know the name, but it's sort of just like I wouldn't have gotten it. So I was assigning that feeling to you as well.
Yeah. It's not Gary Trent because he was
taller. Oh my God.
Is it Gary Trent? Let's go.
Holy shit. Gary Trent Sr. I'm counting that. I should have let you. You obviously were talking about senior. So clue 4, I played the rest of the season with the Raptors before spending 3 years each with the Wolves and the Mavs. And that's literally all Wikipedia has for me. My 9-year NBA career is summed up in 2 paragraphs, which is insulting. My son was drafted in 2018 by the Blazers, making us one of the few father-son duos to have played for the same franchise. The similarities didn't stop there. This is clue 6, as he was also traded 41 games into a season from Portland to Toronto in his 3rd season. The exact same circumstances as I had. Clue 7, I'm probably better known for being on the sidelines of Raptors games nowadays wearing outlandish puffy jackets. Oh, that I might have gotten. I didn't read that clue. He had a fun fact, though. This should have been a clue somehow, like the last one. All of Gary Trent Jr.'s sons have names based on his own name. Gary Trent II, Gary Trent Jr., Gary Trent, because Garrison spells out Gary's son, Grayson, and Graydon.
I feel like that's a form of child abuse. Like you can't.
Good for you. That was not a one-shot kill, but that was good by you. Great showing.
I would have gotten it, I think, by the Wolves Mavs question, because I only associate him with the Wolves for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, cool. All right. I'm fairly sure I have the correct person for Austin's second guess a player. Are you ready?
Yes.
Clue number 1. I was a lottery pick in 2014. Go. Just me.
I was a lottery pick in 2014. I'm
You
just
were
assuming
covering.
because it's from Austin, this guy played for the Pacers.
Okay.
That's too late for Danny Granger. I just need to take a guess. I just don't trying to think of just Pacers during that era. Yeah, just give me the next clue.
All right. This isn't going to help you. I have played for 6 different teams.
Okay.
The next clue will help you. Clue 3. I am a career 41% shooter from deep, with my best season coming in 2017 with 49% from 3. 49. Let's see. I want to make sure that's right. Okay. I have to give a small correction. This player shot 49.4% with a team to which he was traded mid-season. So his full season stats for 2017-18 are 42.6%. This, of course, is all assuming that I have the correct player, which I think I do.
Really funny if you didn't.
No, I got, because he did shoot 41% for his career, and he was a lottery pick in 14. But yeah, so 49.4%. I'll give you 49.4% in 26 games for the Mavs in 2017-18, 38.7% for the Knicks in 55 games in 17-18.
Holy shit. Oh, Tim Hardaway Jr.
No.
Damn.
Good guess, though. Got the Knicks Mavs overlap there. I wonder if they were traded together. Does that line up right? Can't remember. Sorry, I didn't even finish that clue. Despite my sharpshooting abilities that I am solely known for, I have never competed in the All-Star Weekend 3-point contest. That's the end of clue 3.
Oh my god, I feel like I should know this one. The Knicks and the Mavs is something I need to get hung up on. 2017, 2018. He was traded from the Mavs to the Knicks?
I think it's the other way. I think it's Knicks to the Mavs.
From the Knicks to the Mavs in 2017, 2018. From the Knicks? Steve Novak? No, way too late. Terrible guess. My God. Yeah, no, keep going.
All right. Clue number 4. In 2014, I led the country in scoring at 26.7 points per game and went on to become the NCAA National Player of the Year. So he took you back to college here.
Yeah, I know nothing about college. So please carry on.
All right. Clue 5. I am ranked. Good news. More college clues. Clue 5. I am ranked 7th all time in scoring in NCAA history currently, and was ranked 5th all time during the year I left for the NBA.
Holy, I feel like that's probably something I should know. I'm just still thinking about the Knicks Mavericks link. And
I hope I'm not misleading you by saying it was Knicks to Mavs, but just looking at his basketball reference page, the Knicks are first and the Mavs are second. I assume that suggests who he played for, first versus second.
Traded from the Knicks to the Mavs. Who's someone that it seems like they were relatively good that the Knicks just gave up on. That doesn't really narrow the field that much. This is going to frustrate the hell out of me. Keep going.
All right. Clue 6. I was coached in college by my father. Clue 7. I am playing for my current team for the second time in my career.
Awesome. If I would have known who the player is, I would know what that means. Oh, this is...
I would say, if you'll accept a small hint, that you do need to remember who this clue is from when you consider this guy is playing for this team for the second time.
Okay. I literally can't think of anybody on the Indiana Pacers roster right now. That's like the level of that's how deep into the
I am not 100% sure that I remembered that this guy is on the Pacers. So I don't know how much that helps you.
Damn, you didn't remember he was on the Pacers.
Well, I'll give you another clue because you only do have one more, and it's not going to help you because the clue is I went to Creighton. Maybe that does help you.
Oh, Doug McDermott.
You
Fuck.
got it. Oh, good. Okay. I didn't have to help you.
Yeah, that was good. That was a disaster. Take us out of here, please. Get us out of here.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for contributing your clues. Thanks for making Dan sweat with so many college related clues. Just bring them on. Do some McDonald's All-America clues. Let's just make it even harder going forward. If you have not done so already, please remember, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies, join our Discord. Link to do that is in the YouTube and podcast description. Buy our merch. Same place for all that stuff. I think that's going to cover it. Looking forward to all the playoffs, Dan. Looking forward to more podcasts, probably more frequently. I don't want to make any promises, but yeah, so that'll be good. Thanks, everybody. Shout out Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.